Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and guests unveil astrology's ancient archetypes that continually build the collective experiences in our unconsciousness. Get ready to find your free will from your roots in the stars.
Well, hello, happy 4th of July for the USA, and it's Talk Cosmos. I'm Sue Rose Minahan. In 1776, this nation declared its independence, and remarkably, today, we've experienced two extraordinary measurement cycles. One would be the eclipse. It's a lunar eclipse. It's the third eclipse of this season. There were 6 in this year. There was another lunar eclipse on June 5th in Sagittarius. And this one is a flip back, you might say, from the past nodes that we have. Nodes are a lunar point where the cycle of the path of the moon and the sun intersect. And in astrology, this has some significance as far as where we're coming from and where we're going to. And that would be, well, I was going to broaden that, but we'll just keep powering on here. This one is in Capricorn, and the last nodes were in Capricorn. There are 6 planets right now retrograde. This is an intense time that we are recapitulating, we are reanalyzing, re-diagnosing, all kinds of, any kind of re-word where it's getting back in focus. The other extraordinary part is that for the United States of America, as of July 4th, 1776, and we're looking at the chart called the Sibley chart that is 5:10 p.m. There are a few others, but that's the one that's predominantly focused on. There is such a process in astrology where as the sun returns to its exact degree, it's called a solar return chart. And those transits, we get some information about the energies, how they relate, and it's mathematical. Astrology is mathematical, and I speak as such because we have non-astrologers. But the fact is that today, these two events, the eclipse that is actually happening on the East Coast at just after midnight, 44 minutes before 1 o'clock, and here on the West Coast, it's 44 minutes before 10 o'clock. Yes. And so at any rate, the just to finish this little complication through all of you, the solar return was 8 hours earlier. Okay, tonight we have 2 guests to talk about this lunar Capricorn full moon and the solar return with the United States and however else we go. Paetra Tauchert is returning with us. She's been on the program in 2018 and 19, and Paetra's an evolutionary astrologer, a writer, artist, master gardener. She hosts her own radio show, Astroscape, which is a musical astrological perspective. And I think there's actually another way that she describes that. It is more musical perspective through the astrological lens, and that happens to be on KOWS-FM. And if you go on to our website, you'll see Paetra, and it'll mention it there. So if you can't remember all this, great. But it's very exciting. It's twice a month, and she brings in all kinds of music and about the artists for the archetype. It's fascinating. In addition, we have Shannon Hayes, evolutionary and Mayan astrologer, a consultant, hair design salon owner, a stargazer, photographer, and she's also a member of our Talk Cosmos monthly cosmic collaboration panel. So tonight, with no further ado, hello. Paetra and Shannon.
Hi. Hi, Sue. Hi, Shannon. Yeah. It's great to be back.
It is. Now, just for our audience, we are not sitting in the same location, and so there may be pauses, and there may be a little interruptions. And it's the 4th of July. Sometimes we're hearing, even though our cities aren't celebrating, we may get a little punctuation from the outside hemisphere. This lunar Capricorn full moon, 13 degrees. It seems to be about our Capricorn structures and radically transmuting our values, maybe out of necessity. But those are a couple of themes, it seems I've noticed. If either of you want to give some feedback on what you might think as we roll along here, or else.
Well, yeah, I mean, okay, so hi everyone, this is Shannon. Hi Sue, hi Paetra. So yeah, I mean, it is really interesting. It's well, I mean, it's like all one has to do really this day and age is like look at Facebook, social media, or the newspaper to see like what's happening, right? And these transits just totally, for me, they totally explain it. I mean, with all the breaking down of what this has been considered a democratic country, it's like we're slipping away from that. And people are starting to get angry. I mean, between like the full moon and then Mars moving into Aries, you see like the restlessness, you see the anger, you see people getting upset. And you also see with the full moon, the Cancer Capricorn axis, the abuse of power. You have, like you were saying, you have the lineup of Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn all in Capricorn, which can totally be a power play, power struggle, abuse of power, one inflicting their beliefs on what they feel is right and how they do right, what's right and wrong. So
ethics,
right?
Yes. Ethics is so
lack of, right?
Yeah, it's involved absolutely with Capricorn and Saturn. And I just hear a note for myself to complement what you're saying, and that is it's authority and government, that is very Capricorn, and ethics, which is Capricorn. And of course, the moon represents the emotions and the public, because this lunar full moon at 13 degrees actually falls in our the moon itself falls in the first house.
Yeah, absolutely. First house, seventh house. So yeah, it's like government versus the public. Well, and you see, I mean, you just see it everywhere. I mean, it's not only that, it's like, coming up soon too, all of us, myself included, who've been having to rely on unemployment, right? That's going to stop. Like that extra 600 that the government helped to subsidize people is going to stop on July 25th in most states. So now, then now Mars and Aries, then, this eclipse and like the full moon, and just like the intensity of the emotional aspect of these times, there's going to be so many more millions of people out of work with no money.
We do have a situation, and Paetra, here we're barreling along, but I will bring in one other feature, since you mentioned the 25th of July. And this is a different system of measurement from time. It's called solar arcs. Without any more to do, it's a cycle of measurement. And just like in life, we have an overlay through experiences in life. This is one way to review that energy. And at the moment, and it happens every 30 years, it can go into a new sign. We happen to have on the 23rd, after 30 years, our transformational planet of transmuting planet of Pluto, the outer dwarf planet, it will be leaving Virgo, looking to Mercury, to go to Libra, looking to Venus of partnership. So that's going to shift also quite a bit of energy. Venus, rules many dimensions between Libra and Taurus. And Paetra, I know.
Something that I wanted to point out, which feels important, is that this eclipse is in Capricorn, and it's happening just right after Saturn steps back into Capricorn.
Right.
And, like bookending this really intense period where Saturn joins Pluto and Jupiter again, and other asteroids if you're reading those. And it, like, you know, like whatever's going to happen now with Saturn and Pluto, like the stage is set, so to speak. And then Saturn's back in there, and now we have an eclipse. It's like, all right.
Whoa.
Right?
That'll be the rest of the journey of the Saturn and Cap, and then Saturn and Jupiter will hold hands and cross into Aquarius together right at summer or winter solstice.
Yeah,
So,
right. Yeah, I know. It's just crazy, isn't it? It's so,
yeah.
it's unbelievable.
Well,
It just not let up, you know. It's like, that's the thing. It's like it's going to be like a train wreck, you know. It's like it just keeps going. It's like, oh my God.
Totally.
well, I guess really if we're going to self-correct, I know that's used so much in marketing, but there is some idea of expansion and contraction, just like the great mutation happening with Jupiter and Saturn. As we know, the expansion of Jupiter and the contraction of Saturn, and that together it's like a snake that what is it, that
Paracelsus. Sue, that's
Yeah.
a great metaphor. I'm always looking for the best metaphor for that Jupiter-Saturn combination.
Yes, and I can't take total credit for that. It has been thrown about with some other astrologers. I think Rick Levine might be one that in particular has brought it up.
I'm gonna have to adopt that one.
Yes.
A great word.
Really, in order to have demolishing, I mean, it's just like in land here, you know, you might grandfather it in by leaving one little wall, but then the rest of it's demolished. You know what I'm saying about new contractors coming in and reestablishing a new building or home or something. But really, we're in that kind of potential life cycle where there's some real shifts. You know, it had brought up, I mean, because we were talking about, yes, it's difficult, but there could be like the contraction and expansion really just part of the process. And, you know, it's been buzzing around on media. I was just informed, I didn't realize that about all the planets having a lineup. Well, that's just one area of space. It's not literally all one great big line across the sky, because it's like surveying. They're actually in different locations. Right. Yeah. Right. But it does seem like if it's on the left side, which it is, the eastern side, the first quadrant and the fourth quadrant of individuality. So I'm thinking, because here I am, not to be Pollyanna, but trying to get myself out of this total train wreck idea, which I agree with the bionic person, but thinking that it does require people to be self-responsible. You know, I think Shannon, you and I were mentioning that too, about how in an earlier conversation, you know, that responsibility for our consequences, not projecting, being self-reliant.
Well, yeah, and getting yourselves out there. I mean, this is a time we all need to participate. That's what this is about. It's not about sitting around, you know, and praying that someone's going to like pull us out of this major rut that the country's in. It's like people need to get out in the streets. They need to start calling their representatives and their senators. Yeah. They need to become involved in what our future is going to look like. Otherwise, it's like we're going to have these like, you know, Trumpers and these people that are in this situation of power that are going to run us down, and they're going to sell us out even more to these big corporations.
Yeah.
Trump isn't running the country. He's selling us out to these corporations, and that's what's running us.
Well, I mean, to a certain extent, those corporations pull the strings of most of the government. So
right.
It's, I mean, it's like all sewn up. I mean, if somebody makes it to the point where they even could be president, it's because they've been pre-approved to a certain extent by enough corporations that they're like had their way paved financially.
Exactly.
You know what it could be too? I often think of fair weather friends. I mean, I really like a lot of people, and like anybody, if you live long enough, you kind of realize who sticks with you through thick and thin and who's kind of fair weather. And so if you look at our society, when it all goes great, hey, it's fine. But then when the tide comes in and it gets all washed away, which is what's happening, then it's another set of circumstances, you know. So I'm thinking that because corporations in some ways, without trying to here I am, the moderator of polarity here once again. But I am thinking that if you look at General Motors, if you look at Detroit, you look at all these other cities in the past, and even Seattle, where Shannon and I are from, or in, that with all these big corporations now that are employing all kinds of people. Well, if you had a perfect world, well, quote unquote, and you had your little house or your abode, and you had recreation and transportation, the needs that we consider comfort, then in a way we don't worry too much if the corporates are ruling everything. But it's when it gets so imbalanced and evident because it's falling apart, the structure is evidently imbalanced. It's just because we need to take personal responsibility and participation. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Personally, I think anytime you sell out too much to corporate, it's a bad idea, because corporate, now that they've been given the rights of a human being, which I think is totally absurd and crazy.
I agree.
Like, who's in charge of this kind of vote?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't get asked about that one.
Thank you.
The quote unquote Supreme Court was in charge of that.
Right.
Thank you for the
Shannon.
Bush
Yep. Please understand, I'm total support of what you're saying, Shannon. I'm just thinking that on a social basis, as people are listening and they may think this or that, I'm bringing up the fact that it may not have been so conscious in people's minds, or any of us for that matter. I mean, it was to a certain point, but we didn't see quite the cliff coming because of the, like you say, selling out or
it's always
being
just
involved.
Really. It's always hard to really see what's coming because the news distorts everything so much, and on both sides. I'm not saying it's just, the progressives are all good and the Republicans and corporations are all bad, because the Democrats,
honestly, both are hideous.
Both are hideous. Thank you. It's like they both are. One's as awful as the other. It's like we're just
There's no moral high ground on either side. They're both they've descended into the pit, and that's where they live.
Yep, exactly.
So it seems like, in some ways, looking at the astrology to go somewhere, I'm looking at the eclipse and the USA chart. Okay. Now, this was as of either today here in Seattle of, 9:44 or else midnight, 44 minutes to 1. And I do notice one, Chiron. Chiron's a centaur. It's the healer, it's the alchemist, it's the shaman, it's also the maverick that couldn't heal himself. We all have this wound, and in the United States chart, it's to be ourselves. It's in Aries. Can we really be that total identity of ourself? But because right now, I think in that eclipse, Chiron, the one that's transiting, it hasn't quite reached, it won't reach our natal one of 22 degrees because it's an 8-year cycle, so it's going to take several years yet to reach it. So we're like in, kind of progressing to that point, but it's conjunct. And again, this goes to another, the north node of the solar arc, not natally, because our natal is 6 degrees Leo, but
right.
It's the solar arc.
Yeah, well, in the transits and the eclipse, Mars is right behind it. Mars is going to transiting Mars is going to hit that Chiron in Aries in our 4th house, the Sibley chart, because Mars is in Aries and Chiron's in Aries right now.
Oh, interesting. My chart doesn't show where Chiron is. What degree is it?
Well, the transit in the eclipse chart,
or no, the natal Sibley Chiron in the 4th.
I think 22. I think it's 22 Aries.
It's a 20. It's 20 degrees Aries in the natal chart in the 4th house, Chiron.
So darn square to where Pluto and Jupiter.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. That's right. So people are fighting for this. They're fighting for equality. They're fighting for I live here. I'm worth something, and all of that. And I think it's these dynamics, like Obama said, democracy is messy. So, it somehow trying to see through all this, and it's reinventing ourselves. It's with Chiron. It's of our, and defending, wouldn't it be defending our home, right? 4th house.
Yeah,
absolutely.
A lot of wounds there too. It's like there's a lot of
and
stuff.
all the vets too, right? That's Chiron in the 4th in Aries.
Say that
What's
again,
that?
Petra. What did you say?
I said all the vets. That's Chiron
Oh,
in Aries
yeah.
in the 4th.
That's right. Exactly.
So true.
Oh my God. So true. Yeah, being left behind, it's like.
Which brings me to Eris of Discord, because that was Eris's, that's ERIS, folks. And she's a big cycle of 500 and some years, was really slow, and it's in Aries right now, but it's also square Pluto. And I think we've had 3 squares. Pluto has squared Aries because Pluto's actually moving faster. So I'm just thinking of that disenfranchised, that wants to be heard. That is the echo between vets or Black Lives Matters, or when it gets down to it, the worker, so many facets.
Yeah, workers, homeless people. I mean, it's, disenfranchised.
So unity is inclusion seems to be the message rather than exclusion, and participation, ownership of looking at our picture, regardless of who may have helped. It's like our responsibility to pull ourselves up and out. I think those are major themes with Capricorn, which means, and we can help, right? I mean, still have.
I also think about the 13 grandmothers in association with Capricorn. Maybe that's shamanic astrology where I got that. I can't remember.
Yes, I love it.
Whatever it is, I latched onto it. It feels like it's sound. It's like we've got the business world version of Capricorn, and then we've got the deeper, more kind of like hippie spiritual alignment part of Capricorn.
Oh, absolutely. The wisdom of the elders,
Excellent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's what's cool, because it's like you see that coming out too, like more like wisdom keepers and stuff. Even on Facebook, it's like some of these people like Don Marzo, right, in Mexico, he's on Facebook, and he's total like shaman, healer, wisdom person. And he's even on Facebook right now expressing like, his kind of like disillusionment in a way of how things are going, and how people are responding to each other, but also how governments are mistreating the people, and especially like the indigenous people.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I mean, at the same time, having this Uranus also in Earth is so interesting. The trine by sign, at least, of Uranus just starting to move the ground beneath these structures of like food and money and currency, and then all the embedded structures of government and business and all that. And then like the hailing back to the 13 grandmothers and the bones and the stones and that like mountain wisdom of Capricorn. And then I've been thinking and talking about Uranus and Taurus and feeling more and more how there's going to be like a split between the really futuristic people, and then there's going to be a whole Luddite movement of people that are like, no technology, that's our technology,
Yeah. Well, particularly if there is a real movement towards artificial intelligence and also body parts, that this idea of consciousness being transferred, there's going to be, and I'm not even sure where I'm going to fit into that whole picture. It's like, oh my goodness, it gets pretty powerful thinking about what we're giving into, possibly. I mean, on different levels of giving away control. I mean, that's futuristically speaking. Boy, there was some great thing I was thinking of. I thought, oh boy, that's what we'll talk about when we get back. We will take about a minute or so, a little break here, but it's potent, thinking of, well, I love the idea of the wisdom elders, because essentially there's circular thinking. That's what it was. I remember hearing that in a recent talk.
What is it?
Circular, the circle, the group, the ancestry of wisdom, of being in a circle, versus this pyramid idea of linear control role. And And so we're moving in many directions. Well, this is Talk Cosmos on July 4th, the United States, 4th of July, and I have Paetra Tauchert and Shannon Hayes, and we're talking about our eclipse, the lunar eclipse that's today in the United States, and we'll be back in just a moment.
While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. Currently, we are in the period of Cancer. By leaving a cycle based on connecting mental communication to the external, the energy of Cancer involves emotions, which create our personal story through our emotional associations and attachments. As a cardinal water sign that is nurturing, Cancer needs to process emotions in one's own internal rhythm of cycles in order to complete an evolution.
Ciao and greetings to all you folks out there that have got enough curiosity to tune in to what's going on here. My name is Jeff Peters. I am the Lively Astrologer, and you're listening to Talk Cosmos on Alternative Talk 1150 AM, where we unveil astrology's ancient archetypes that continually build the collective experiences in our consciousness.
Make us part of your daily routine. Alternative Talk 1150.
Hi, I thought of what I was going to bring in that will just open up a new arena here of our conversation as we migrate. And that is, this month had 2 new moons in Cancer. There was 0 degrees solar solstice eclipse, which was on the 20th. 2 Saturdays ago, and then there'll be another but a new moon, and that is, I'm just checking where exactly. And that's going to be on the 20th of July at 28 degrees Cancer. And the reason I'm bringing it up is that, when we have a new moon, we see it seeded, we come to the full moon, it culminates, and we go, hey, this is what has developed and what we're looking at. But here we are, we're at the full moon, and it is a lunar eclipse. Something's going to give way, something's going to transmute. The light goes out, there is that energy happening. But ahead of us is perhaps the angle, the perspective could be, but for why? I mean, we have spoken of why, some of the issues of the fact that it is in Capricorn and that we're reviewing, and its ethics and karma and wisdom also, and all these factors. But the fact is that the next new moon, and I don't even know if I pulled that chart up, so here I am bringing it up, but at 28 degrees, it's like, what can we remove so that something can breathe in the new fertile soil of Cancer? Cancer is so productive. It's the womb, it's motherhood, nurturing, security, emotions, our stories.
Well, I feel like it's also significant that it's the last, like you said, the last set. And so, like, what are the lessons, Like, this is the last minute to distill, last portal to distill what the 1.5 years of the Capricorn Cancer nodal axis was about.
Ah, yes, exactly. Which was quite a long energy. And in fact, I think the last solar eclipse of 0 degrees Cancer was opposite of the Christmas eclipse that we had at, I think, 3 Capricorn or something.
Yeah, definitely.
So
it's like, the wormholes, the dragon holes of the eclipses, like stitching these energies through and like flossing the energy. I mean, there was so much emphasis around the Cancer Capricorn stories, like all the kids in the cages that are still in the cages that I read somewhere, they're letting them out. But, like that being such a big piece, and families being safe, and refugees and all of that, so it's like the way that it moves is that we still have to hold those issues close to our hearts. We've worked those, and now it's like, now we add something in, which is, I guess if it's the Gemini North Node after this, it's like, okay, we have to think clearly on how to work with the problems that are happening right now.
Yes, and that brings me up with when you say thinking. Well, we do have North Node in Gemini, so of course we are going to be mercurial. But then there's this overlay of the Virgo that we've been wanting to fix, and that's a very good energy because 29 degrees. I think Shannon, you keep reminding me as we talk occasionally that that's like, how do you finally what unfinished business? That's it. What's the unfinished business before we go into this? The other of Libra, because that is the seventh sign archetypally, and it involves self and others, not just fixing.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, and it's there are a lot of adjustments too, which is also very Virgo. That need to be made before you go into one thing. Before you make that transition into something else. So, I mean, a lot of the things that we're dealing with now are things that have been happening for many decades in this country, and things are just, it's like there are issues that have been tried to be buried without finding resolution for, and it's true. It's like a lot of it has to do with race. It's about, stomping on our indigenous elders' lands. There's a lot of acknowledgement and forgiveness that needs to be happening here before you can move on.
Right. Acknowledgement, yeah, awareness, yeah. Paetra, go ahead.
Oh no, I was agreeing. That's all.
Right. It is so true, isn't it? I mean, there is the fact of validity and confirmation and awareness and just witnessing these words that have real merit in many social situations. I'm thinking like mediation or just healing practices that instead of resisting.
Well, yeah, but even just, acknowledge the fact of what's been done, the damage that's been done, like they never acknowledge stuff, it's like they just glaze over it. They try to throw money at it or, get a few people involved in it. But it's like, what's been happening in this country is this country has been founded on the back of slavery and abuse of the elders who were here and wisdom keepers before we were.
Yeah.
And this country's never really acknowledged or apologized for that, which is what keeps these things going. I mean, you really it needs to be acknowledged. It needs for both parties to come together. There needs to be serious apologies before you can really even go the next step. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I think we forget that constantly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's like why a lot of this stuff like keeps resurfacing. It's like, sure, Black people fought hard in the 60s for their civil rights and stuff, but you see how they totally don't get it. They don't get paid as much as we do. It was like they get like, some rights given to them and stuff, but they're still not really considered equal in this country on certain levels. And I'm not saying that that's everybody, but there are things that need to be reevaluated and readjustments need to be made, I guess.
Which is Virgo again.
Right,
But
it's a Virgo
we're going to be leaving that Virgo energy, and and what I'm getting at is that perhaps there's more hope in the future. I mean, possibly anything is possible. And the reason I say it is because they often say if you try to do the same solution 15 million times and it's not working, well, then what's wrong? It's because you're not doing something different. So I think the emphasis on something different is part of the solution. And it's also bridging, because there's a whole heap of, I mean, I do feel strongly that our own strength is going to be when we recognize the dignity and uniqueness of every individual.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And no, I hear you. I'm just rephrasing it that way. And it includes absolutely recognizing this ridiculous attitude of lesser. In other words, just because a person has a beautiful tone to their skin doesn't mean anything. I mean, we ought to be looking at everybody like flowers, like, wow, what a garden. I mean, we've got tall people, short people, white people, black people, brown people, beautiful shades, different features. It's very exciting, and it's intriguing, rather than always having to mirror ourselves. And part of that is projection. And that could be a problem with going into, well, it has been, considering just even the last 30 years, Moon has been in Libra, then we're emotionally protecting and projecting. Here with our Pluto in Libra, it's going to have power versus powerlessness, but there will be another dimension of what maybe Venus will be able to get through, along with the Moon that'll be in Scorpio, where there's reasons of real commitment and of intensity and of exchange between resources. So I'm not saying there's any utopia solution, but at least it's a shift in the river, right? I mean, maybe we'll bridge something that through all this demise that we're approaching. I mean, it's not rosy, that's for sure. There's a bunch of thorns. And Paetra, you have a garden. You understand heirloom.
Oh yeah, there's nothing like getting poked by a rose thorn. It's not my favorite thing.
No, it doesn't. It really. Some of those are fierce. I can see it now.
But that would be the Mars and Aries, right? There's some thorns right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm looking at this natal moon, which isn't quite fair because I don't think I sent it to you guys, and maybe you could pull it up. It's June 20th. And I'm noticing that Mars is in Aries, and it is still conjunct Chiron at 12 and 9 degrees.
What chart are you looking at?
What day?
The next new moon in Cancer, because here we have a full moon, but it's usually we're segued between two new moons. So what I'm saying is, if we can clear something by the time this next one rolls around July 20th, Pluto will have solar arced into Libra, for however that experience goes, which is interesting too, because that will connect with all the people born in about 1970, 71 that have early Pluto in Libra. There'll be a whole different generation of people.
Yeah.
Also, the Mars, after it gets to that point at 12, it's going to be starting to apply to a sextile with Venus, which is a nice softening, cooling agent, maybe one of the only ones that will be happening.
Oh boy, I see that. That's true. Yeah, 15 degrees. Well, if we could even think of some innovative, I don't know. It's always, isn't it the truth? We're really living in the pretty immediate times. So the forecast, looking ahead, trying to figure on what, because we do know that there's a lot of, I was going to say a lot of loss, but Shannon, I hear you in the background. You have a thought.
I was just looking at it going, yeah, we're actually watching our history unfolding before us. Like, these times are just so major, it's like there's just so much change coming. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what it looks like, but it's just major shakedown all around.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's the weird thing, that it's pretty much worldwide. I mean, there's special things that are unique to certain regions, but for the most part, we're going through this on the collective level.
Exactly. I mean, this is massive collective change. I mean, this is the kind of stuff they put in history books, I mean, it's
enough to make you think Saturn and Pluto must have conjuncted or something.
Yeah. And for those folks, that was January 12th, 38-year cycle. So it's pretty major. That is so true. And I remember, was it Gemini Brett, that brought up the fact of these prenumerals? This is a prenumeral eclipse. And it happens to be visible all over the Americas. But it's such a slight about a third of it is all that's being eclipsed, and it's just like a tea bag as far as a shade goes, so you don't even notice it. But what he was saying, when this happens with lunar before and after there, the prenumerals, that it's like old energy that's being discarded, right?
That's what it feels like. I mean, and it's the South Node eclipse too, so that purging quality that K2 or the South Node has.
Oh, good point.
Yes, absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean, and you see it everywhere. I mean, it's like digging up old stuff, right? I mean, all this old stuff that they've tried to repress, and it's like, oh, America the Great, MAGA, make America great again. It's like,
are we great yet?
Right? Are we great yet? It's like, hello.
Well, and also it kind of feels like the tearing down of the statues feels like a very literal South Node eclipse.
Oh my God, absolutely. I mean, that like says a whole lot. It's like, you know, this is all like, and all over the world, they're tearing down these statues.
Yeah. I mean,
that's interesting.
Like acupuncture, like release points, right?
Yes.
Because I'd be willing to bet money, it'd be an interesting study to just see where these statues are put. I bet that they often end up at like ley line spots, just because that's where people are drawn to put things, because you can feel the vibe there, even if you're not woo-woo at all. It just is kind of like, where should we put it? Let's put it there, you know?
Right. Oh, exactly. Yeah, they sense it. I mean, it's like all the pyramids all throughout Mexico and like Central and South America, they're all on power lines like that. And I was just reading that, I think it was over by, was it Peten or someplace? It was over, I think it was in Mexico. There was this hill, and on this hill, they, when the conquistadors came over and invaded that part of Mexico, they put up this statue of like Jesus the Redeemer, right? Kind of similar to the big one in Brazil. And they put it this hill, and they actually took it down this week.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I hope if any place, they just go in some museum and then you watch it there if they have to. But you know, oh my goodness. Shall we talk about this Trump's?
Yeah, let's look at that.
President Donald J. Trump. Now, for people that would be.
That is not a president, okay?
Well, no, Shannon, we're okay. It's okay. He is a president. But at any rate, it's June 14th. 1946 at 9:51 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time in Jamaica, New York. So, and what we're looking at, I think, is his chart, because it is a full moon chart, very close, a total full moon chart, and that's what we're talking about right now. It's not a total one right now, but it's a double signature, like we would say in Maurice's class.
Eclipse man's getting eclipsed.
Yeah,
and I mean, boy, those are some really intense transits that are happening to him from
incredible.
I mean, like serious lightning bolts from the sky kind of transits.
Yep, absolutely.
Saturn exactly opposite, or maybe it's hard to see, the writing's kind of like, maybe it's 1 degree off, it's not partile, but still darn close. And then Jupiter on the Venus. And then Uranus on the midheaven. Good Lord.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Getting nailed.
Now, when you said Saturn, were you looking at transiting Saturn or his? Oh, yeah, you're looking at his natal Saturn.
Transiting Saturn.
Opposite.
Yeah.
Transiting Saturn, yeah.
But also the fact that he has his natal Saturn opposite the Jupiter conjunct Pluto that is happening 3 times. It actually happened on the 30th exact, but it's still 23 degrees, and the next one will be, I think, in November, and that is of great magnitude.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the kind of transit that either takes you up or takes you down. It's not
right.
Total transformation and a new changing perspective that
or the karmic broom, as Maurice always would call it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, Saturn is the karmic broom thing. And in the 12th house, the 6th, 12th house, just having Saturns there, it's very... But it is amazing, too, that he's having a nodal return coming up I mean, his is 20 degrees Gemini North Node, and we're 29. And for those non-astrologers, that's a retrograde. I mean, it goes in the primary motion.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Does it go in the primary motion?
No,
yeah, it does.
It's retrograde. Which is as far as clockwise and counterclockwise. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I was just thinking it goes. Yeah, it goes. Yeah, it goes primary motion.
Primary,
it goes clockwise.
Yeah, clockwise.
I never knew that clockwise was also called primary motion.
Well, Brett, again, Shannon and I took Gemini Brett's sacred astronomy class, and
and you learned special terms.
Oh, big time!
Yeah.
Earth, when it spins, yes, Earth spins around the axis is the primary motion.
Ooh, love it.
And then when it goes around the sun, that's the secondary motion.
Yep.
The orbit. So anyway.
Yeah, I know. It was so cool. It was a great class, actually.
But there's a lot for people for those people listening. There's lots of ways to look at astrology rather than paper, through the stars. But yes, so I don't know really as far as his energy, but how would it relate? And I didn't do, that's the eclipse, but how would that relate to the U.S. chart? I don't know if we can pull one in and.
Well, I mean, it's a lot of stress. All this stuff is stress, and he's stressed, incredibly stressed right now. Totally. I mean, it's a huge effect on America's chart because he's becoming really irrational, and he's doing like crazier things, like, that. And I'm not, I mean, I know it sounds like I hate him, which I probably do, but at the same time, I mean, he is doing crazy stuff, like having, going to Mount Rushmore. Mm-hmm. And having a huge outdoor, like, no mask crazy fest, getting people riled up in sacred land. Doing stuff that's unbelievable. I mean, it's like crazy making stuff. So I mean, there's a lot of stress there. I mean, he's stressed out his own party, so the country stress. I mean, I think people feel that. A lot of people I know, even though they don't know astrology, feel stressed right now. I think the whole country, as well as the world, feels.
Of course, we're like going through an enormous breakdown of anything that we know, which,
it's total change on every level, and no one knows how to plan for the future.
But I think, and we only have a few minutes, so somehow we're going to have to come up with some solutions for people, because we're having a good talk, and I welcome all this, but we do need to come up with something that is going to be something that people can work with, and because that's what life is. Life has, like, okay, the iceberg broke, but there's a little patch. Jump over there with a polar bear. No.
Well, the North Node in Gemini is teaching us adaptability and think on be really responsive and response-able, and whatever it is that happens, we don't have control over the strings that are pulling the puppets on the stage that are apparently look like they're running the show. All we can do is, how do we show up and respond to every moment of our lives? And that's so true every day.
Yeah,
exactly. We have to be flexible. It's like you just have to, because you cannot control everything right now. There's so much happening. So, I mean, it's true. It's the best thing is to like find what you can do to make you happy, to help other people. It's like we all need to support each other right now, because we don't have a lot of government helping us. So people, I mean, the coolest thing about right now that I've seen is like other neighbors helping neighbors, people helping other people, people helping animals. It's like, that's what you see that's cool, that where you can have faith.
Well, I see that supported in some ways. Like if I look at the USA, our natal chart, July 4th, 1776, and we look at the solar return, which happens to be today. Also, it's a birthday. 5 o'clock back east when that is. But here we have this R transiting North Node, 29 degrees Gemini, is the Mars, the natal Mars of our planet in the 7th house, others, of our direction and of our neighbors and of our ideas and this and flexible, as we're saying, is conjuncting. They're both moving towards each other, because the North Node is going smaller because it goes from 30 to 1, and then anyway, and it will. No, that's right.
Well, it also feels worth mentioning that we were born with a Mercury retrograde in Cancer, and we're currently having a Mercury retrograde in Cancer. And not that they're that rare, but it does feel significant that it's happening right now with this eclipse, you know, like at this time this year where everything's so crazy, that we also have this like complete alignment basically of what is, you know, the mind, the perception of the United States, of the collective. Like, what do we value? What do we think? What is our like game plan here?
Yeah.
You know?
What's our story? And retelling our story.
Yeah, retelling it in a big way. Like it's all unraveling right now, and that's dramatic. But the beauty
that could be.
We're still have new like material that we can weave together. It's like, okay, we'll put the loom up, you know, and let's start to weave something new.
Yes, I love this idea, because truly perspective is only gained by maybe what hilltop or what valley we're in. And the fact is, with a new story and a new sense of the truth of reality, embracing these different, all our cultures, stomped on or not, that how they participate, and taking it as a whole gives us a new dimension. There are so many things, like even with and here I'm opening up a can of worms, but with Tulsa, that I was so shocked that was never included in our history books. I can, oh my goodness, it's just alarming.
No, exactly.
It needs to be. That's what I'm told.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that could be right.
Is that like we have to, before we can start something new, we have to finish what we haven't finished.
Well, we need to retell our stories, and I think people need to.
But you can't do, but you need
to.
No,
we need to listen, because people are going to tell the stories, and we can listen. And it is, if first of all, if we have, Uranus and Taurus, that's all the senses, we can listen. One comment: next week is going to be Cosmic Collaboration with Amanda Pierce. Shannon won't be able to meet with us. She's here tonight, and we're going to be talking about Vesta in Cancer. So, and tonight I have Paetra Tauchert of Sebastopol, California, and do go online. You can find Paetra. She's an evolutionary astrologer and has her radio host show of musical interest. So it's like, oh my goodness, a good energy. And Shannon Hayes, an evolutionary Mayan astrologer who also is here in Seattle with me. So we are continuing. This is the 4th of July, repeating on the 9th, and it's Talk Cosmos, talking about the USA, because it is our birthday and potent times we're all experiencing. So we have a few minutes. That's all I had to say.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I totally agree with you. It's like we need a new story. Right. This is a time where we can recreate ourselves to find a story that actually is more aligned with this. But it's like, since, you know, we have to deal with our past, which is happening right now. And you see people like, you know, we talked about before, people tearing down old statues, people coming to grips with like our history. So, you know, I mean, that is the exciting part, is like people are wanting to be more involved.
Well, they have to be. They have to be. People have to be involved.
Well, yeah, because that's the only way that there's going to be a story to tell.
And we're going to have to be acceptive of the people and work with our commonalities in some area, listening to one another. I remember that was one idea of the Black Lives. They said, just listen. And absolutely. By listening. So it's good. Hey, and you know, we only have a moment, but I noticed in our solar return chart, Neptune opposing Neptune. Woo, that's going to be interesting.
Oh, Neptune opposition.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have the Saturn Uranus square, right?
Yep.
Coming up.
Yeah. But those Neptunes are going to be squared by our nodes. So that will be, at best, oh boy, maybe some good movies. No.
At worst, move away from the coastline.
Yeah, we'll make
Yeah,
a good
exactly.
movie. Oh gosh.
But
Well,
I
this
just
is
want to say about just the wrap up about the stories. Like, we're born with our sun not tightly conjunct Jupiter, but pretty close. And
Yes.
we have a Sag rising by the Sibley chart. So the stories are like, that's what we're about here. So
yes.
retelling the new stories is how we rebuild from the ground up.
Yep. Getting
Yep.
that perspective of nurturing what our true home is with maybe our hat on our head. Well, it's such a pleasure. Thank you, Paetra Tauchert. Thank you, Shannon Hayes.
Thank
This
you,
is
Sue.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon. Love
And
you,
Thanks,
girls.
Paetra.
Blessings
Nice
to all. May we have another birth on this with true heart.
Thank you for listening to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and guests unveil astrology's ancient archetypes that continually build the collective experiences in our unconsciousness. Be sure to tune in next Saturday at 6 p.m. to continue finding your roots in the stars.